Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Today is Monday, August 10th, 2020. I would like to call to order the regular board meeting of the Othello School District Board of Directors. I would like to welcome all the guests, those who are on the Zoom call, those community members that are watching us on YouTube. Welcome to the meeting. Thank you in advance for taking the time to watch us conduct business. I wish I didn't have to make this disclosure. Hopefully we don't have any technical difficulties and we have a smooth meeting. But once again, I do want to thank everyone who is either on the Zoom or watching us on YouTube. Thank you very much. I will entertain a motion for the approval of tonight's agenda. Moving on.
I will approve, but I have a couple of modifications. A few, more than one. So let me turn off my little fan so I can make sure everyone can hear me. Under board member discussion, I want to change the name of legislative conference to General Assembly. And then I want to pull C14 from required approvals and move it to C3. With those changes, I would be fine with approving the agenda.
Okay, there's been a motion by Director Stevenson to approve the agenda with a couple modifications. Under board member discussion, changing legislative conference to General Assembly. Also the removal of items C14 to C3. And I would like to motion to amend her motion to include her items and also add an executive session to this meeting for about 10 minutes to discuss potential land or property acquisition with no action being taken. Can I get a second for the motion?
I will second that motion.
Very good. Original motion by Director Stevenson, amended by Director Garza, seconded by Director Johnson. Any further discussion? All in favor, aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. All right, moving on. Talia, do we have any public comment tonight?
No.
All right. I would like to remind the public, even though we are in a Zoom meeting, every announcement we put out, there is an opportunity for you, if you'd like to give public input or have public comment at our meetings. There is a way of getting that done. Item B2, board member discussion. First item on there is the legislative report. Director Stevenson.
Really, my biggest report is that we need to talk about the General Assembly, but that's got its own line item a little bit later. So no specific changes or updates to the legislative report, just we'll need to address those on that line.
Okay, just a reminder to all of us on the second bullet there on the under board member discussion. Let us not forget to assess ourselves after the meeting and make sure that those get turned in. The third item there is the board member attendance to General Assembly. Jen, if you want to start the discussion and let us know which way we need to go and what needs to happen.
You want to do that one now?
That's where we're at, number 3 there.
Do we discuss the board self-assessment?
No.
No. Okay. So General Assembly is September 25th. We've talked about this a couple of times. It's a Friday. It's an all-day thing. It is digital, online only, the only way to attend. And so in prep for that, our area, District 11, is which is really similar to, which is our ESD area. We have a caucus meeting this Wednesday. Did everybody receive an email invitation to that? That's also a Zoom.
I did. I know I did for sure.
Okay. It's run by our area. So myself, Derek is in Walla Walla, and Jill is in oh, shoot, I keep forgetting if she's in Richland or in Kennewick. So we're actually running that. And what a caucus is for those that have had a chance to look through the handbook or can take the opportunity between now and then, if there's any modifications to any of those proposals, we can do line item or complete modification or add something new, all kinds of different things. So that's what the caucus is. And then also just explaining what General Assembly is, how it's different, those different kinds of things. So for OPMA, how many and who is planning? It's best to at least have one person from each district at the caucus. Is anyone else planning on attending that? It's from 5:30 to 7. It's by Zoom this Wednesday, the 12th. Okay, so we don't need to have an OPMA announcement for that. I will be representing. If you have a chance to look through the handbook or have any questions or have any modifications or whatever, please let me know so that we can discuss those there. And then I think that we need to decide who is attending the General Assembly on September 25th. We need someone to vote and we need a backup. And because I'm on the resolutions committee for Wazda, I should not be the voter. I could be the backup voter. We could do it at the board meeting, at the boardroom. We can have all 5 of us if we want. We just need to know if we need to, again, post an OPMA. And then who can vote?
I might not be in town that weekend, so put me as like a backup option, but I better not commit when I don't know if I'll be here.
Okay. I mean, you could do it anywhere because it's digital, but it potentially is not just an all day 8 hour. It could be super long.
I am busy after 4 o'clock that day.
Okay.
But I mean, if I can sit in during the day, I would. I would try to beat as much of it as I can, I guess I'll say.
What was that date on that one again, Jen?
The General Assembly is September 25th. It's a Friday. Oh, wait. Oh, I'm looking at August. That's why I'm so confused. It's, oh, interesting. My September calendar has 2 24ths. It's a Friday.
Okay, right now I'm going to have problems making that date too at the time.
Okay.
Jen, we're in harvest and I can't even offer, sorry.
That's fine. So are we all good with Mike being our primary voter and I'm the backup voter? I have to be present anyways because there'll be some dialogue that I have to say anyways.
I stand corrected, Jen. I was looking at August 25th for the commitment I have. So on the 25th, I should be available.
Okay, let's plan on that for now. And then if things change.
I am fine with Mike being our voting delegate.
I am too.
Okay, perfect. Thanks, guys.
Great. Okay, so those 2 plans planned out. So that's great. So if you have a chance to look over the handbook, has anyone not received the handbook by email? Or do you know?
I didn't receive an email from the caucus, so I don't think I have a handbook either.
Okay, I
think I
will
do.
forward. Sharon, did you say the same for you?
I don't believe I have one either.
Okay, I'll forward you both. I'll send it to the whole board, the handbook, just so that you can all have a chance to look over it. It's lengthy. It's got a lot of pages. So there's 2 specific aspects of the General Assembly that we'll be discussing. First is the Resolution Committee deals with the long-lasting policies and things that Wazda represents. Then there's the whole legislative side of things, how we want Wazda to entertain both at the federal and the state level, legislative changes, updates, modifications. One of those things says, like for an example, one of the changes is that we want Wazda to advocate for changing, let's see, the wording is missing. So we want both levies and bonds to be approved by a simple majority. Right now, levies are a simple majority and bonds are a super majority, which is 60%. And so that's something that Wazda's always advocated for. Just because they're advocating for something doesn't necessarily mean that that is something that they can get the legislation to approve, but those are the goals. So that's just one example of the things. So I'll send out, let me make a note to send you all the handbook, just so that it's nice and fresh. Okay.
All right. Talia, would you remind me of the dates on the Wazda conference?
November 18th through the 22nd.
Janet, and that will be virtual as well, or will there be an in-person opportunity also?
I know that they were making it so you could do either. I think the last thing that I read was possibly virtual only.
Okay. So if that's the case, it'll just be a matter of registration and tuning in. There will be no need for travel or lodging arrangements or anything like that.
Right. That was the case, because I remember now that they just said all hotel reservations have been canceled. There is no cancellation fee. We're just doing it virtual. So, I mean, super tons of great information, whether you're brand newbie or you've been 6, 7, 12 times. You know, there's always great sessions. And Lindsay, what did you think about the first one that you went to last year?
I thought it was really great. I learned a lot and I felt like it was a great team building experience. I mean, to as big of an extent as you could do it. I'm super disappointed that it's online, just because I'm more of a hands-on learner. And so I tend to get adult ADD when I sit on the computer for longer than an hour, or sometimes our board meetings are 5 hours long. That's super hard for me. So I'm not looking forward to an 8-hour day on the computer for Wazda, because I just feel like, just like with school, you just get so much more out of it when you're in person. But I still see the value in Wazda and the things that we learn. And I mean, it's definitely essential for sure. But I'm sad that it's going to be virtual only.
So one thing that they're actually looking at, they're exploring and already trying to figure out how to make it accommodate, is that there are almost like chat rooms with specific topics. And so just like what Lindsay said, it's amazing to be able to connect with other school board members from across the state that maybe have similar problems as us or vastly different problems, just to talk about different ideas and all kinds of different things. So they're creating this way that we could go into different rooms with different specific topics and stuff, and then join conversations and still be able to have conversations, because that's, for me, was a huge component of, at this stage of my school boardness, I guess, to be able to talk to others and say, well, we're having this problem, you know, what, and just get ideas and, oh, we've already done that and we tried this and this worked better for us, or those different kinds of things, and just being able to talk to other board members. And so they are making it so that we can still take advantage of those things, and then maybe even send an email and reach out to another board from all over the state so that we could still have that bonding conversation, question kind of experience.
Great, just so we keep those dates on our radar, guys, and if we're able to attend, that would be awesome. I'm looking forward to see what kind of format they put together where it can be inclusive of as many people. So I'm sure they'll put together a great event. So November 11th through the 22nd, just so we mark those down, and if we're able to.
18 through 22nd. You said 11. That's a long conference.
I wrote down 11, 18. That's why I said 11. Thanks, Jen. Now the 18th through the 22nd. Moving on to the last bullet item in board member discussion is our board retreat. We received an email with potential dates, potential locations. I have been informed by a board member with a very, very good reason that it's going to be tough to do a Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday for her. I guess we need to have a discussion as to what works best. If we can move this to a Saturday, I don't know, guys. I do know that we need to have this activity, and we need to put our heads together as to how we can do the best to accommodate all of us, or make it to where we're all there.
Mike, according to the information that we got tonight, and that's why we're all here on Zoom tonight, I don't see this happening. It would all have to be done by Zoom.
Yeah, as soon as you said that, 10 popped into my mind as even a small gathering. Wow.
Until we progress further, I just don't see this happening or coming together like we would have liked to seen it too.
So do we table this until further notice? I think that's pretty much the option we've got.
I'm afraid we're going to have to.
Hey, Chris, is there any way you can talk to Mr. McBride to see if Zoom is even a possibility for a meeting of this nature? Seeing if the effectiveness of it would even be realized through a virtual meeting?
Absolutely, Mike. I actually wrote that down as Ken and you were talking. So I'll touch bases with him, then I'll talk to you tomorrow about it.
All right. Appreciate that. Then we'll just, go ahead, Jen.
My other concern is because we have Jeanette leaving and we're planning on having another director of business, whatever that title is, I'm sorry. I really feel like we need to have that person hired before we even go to the conversation of dates. And I do see that this isn't a social gathering. This is a business meeting. And so I do kind of see this. If we were to social distance in a large space, I do personally think that we could have this meeting because it's not a social gathering. It's different. There are other concerns as well with that. But for me, that is my primary thing that we need to have. If it's the board and the executive team, then we need to have the full executive team in place before we decide a date. I think, Ken, you wanted to say something there.
Yes, and what the issue that we're running against is the extension that the governor has threw out there on the OMPA, the Open Public Meetings Act. So as long as the board is together and we can't get together in any room of us gathering together because of that, even if we are social distancing.
I missed it. I'm sorry. When are they lifting that? Did they say, or is it indefinitely for now?
The last extension I knew was September 1st, but
It is September the 1st, Ken.
Yep.
I would prefer, because this is meant to be a team building retreat, from my understanding, I would prefer that we do it in person. I just feel like you can't really get to know somebody over the screen, and to be vulnerable and to really get to know each other. I feel like to be effective, we should do that in person. So if we could table it for a month, that's my vote.
Okay, what we'll do then is we'll table it at least till September 1st to see if there isn't another extension to the OPMA rules or restrictions there. Talia, and if you can just remind us or make a note to yourself to bring it back after the 1st of September, depending on what the governor does for an announcement on that.
Got it.
All right, well, thank you guys. Moving on, I don't know if our student reps are on with us.
I sent them a text today and I never got a response from either of them, which is unusual. But I haven't heard, I guess, a no.
No, well, it is summer, so I'll cut them a little bit of slack. At least I will anyway. They're doing a great job. Okay, moving on to item C1. I will entertain a motion to approve required approvals tonight.
I have some questions before we go to that stage. Shocking. These are all accounts payable questions. Great Minds for $20,000. The most of this is on this first page here. And this is a different general account a different coding. So Great Minds for $20,000.
We'll have Jeanette chime in on all of these.
So Great Minds is for elementary math consumables, so workbooks, things like that.
Okay, so we will get things like workbooks in student hands.
Yes, I believe that is the plan. We're going to try to get them those workbooks and things like that, so they're not just doing things on the computer.
Okay, I assume Northwest Textbooks Depository is textbooks. I mean, that makes sense. Some of these are just not clear with the name of the corporation. Porter Capital Corporation, $18,000.
Porter Capital is for the Agile Minds math curriculum. That is something that the high school is utilizing for one of their, or I think a couple of their math courses. And so they actually got a grant to try out this curriculum.
Perfect. Voyager Sopris Learning, $12,000.
It sounds very studious, doesn't it, Voyager? So this is actually for a Cadence, which is formerly Dibbles. And that is a testing book for the elementary schools. And then also Wahidus contracted with them for some professional development as well. So that's in there too.
Okay. And then the next page is Fluid Roofing for $12,000.
So that is for sealant for the Ludicaga roof. We had some repair work and some sealant put on that roof.
Okay. Stevens Clay for $22,000. Can you just give us not super details, but kind of a breakdown?
Absolutely. I can speak to that one, Jeanette. We actually have a total of maybe 3 employees that we've been involved in conversations with our attorney. And really it's the number of conversations that we're having. I have shared with the board in a separate communication just about these conversations leading to either a grievance or an arbitration. So with those employees, again, there's been a significant number of conversations that need to happen, and it can only happen between HR and with our attorney. So again, those conversations have been extensive this month with those employees. There also has been some work with our attorney and another attorney regarding potential litigation, which I share with the board as well. And those have really been the issues that have transpired this month. And again, it's the number of conversations that have transpired around those particular events.
Okay. Just, I think that it's due information to ourselves and to the public, some of those details. And then the last one is Phil Turf for $209,000, and that's under capital. Of my questions.
Yes, field trip, is it? Yes, field, that should be under capital projects. Perfect. And that is the OHS track. And so that project is moving along quite steadily. We're getting down to kind of the last bits and pieces of that. And the last I heard, the logo should be going on here pretty soon. And then the last and final steps of sealing and all of that.
So is there an estimated date that will be completed by? Do you know?
I do not know the estimated date. I do know that they're on time and on budget.
Okay, great. Chris, I would just like to ask, once that has been completed, if we could get like a final wrap up with a dollar amount and all details like that. We knew that there was some potential going to be some overcosts with some of the status of it. Anyways, just once we're done, that would be great to get. I'm sure that's already on your radar, but just to officially asking.
Absolutely. No problem at all.
Thank you. With that information, I would like to approve the required approvals. Motion to approve the required approvals.
Okay, we have a motion to approve required approvals by Director Stevenson. Can I get a second? Second by Director Prowse. Any further discussion? All in favor, aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Moving on to item C2, superintendent informational items. Take it away, Dr. Hurst.
Yes, we want to just start off by introducing Rebecca Montgomery. I think she's still on the mic or the Zoom call. We already have announced that today is our last official day for our Executive Director of Business and Finance, Jeanette Bumgarner. Certainly bittersweet, but we want to also just share with the board and the public listening just what type of support that we're going to have in place to make sure that we continue the work that has been going on. So at this time, we're just going to turn it over to Rebecca. And Rebecca, we just ask that you introduce yourself to the board, to the public, just have a few words to share.
Becky, we can't hear you. Becky, you're unmuted, but we can't hear you. Nope. Mike, I think these are the technical difficulties you were referring to earlier.
Is that better?
But there we go.
Oh, there we go. Yeah.
Can you hear me now? I apologize. You know, they tell you to test your equipment. And I actually did, but obviously I didn't do a very good job. So, I'm very familiar with Othello. I've been assisting the district on a couple of different occasions. I am a former school business manager for 29 years. I officially retired from my school district 4 years ago. I started in school districts as an elementary school secretary, which I believe is great experience for anybody who's works in a fiscal office, because it reminds you why you're doing what you're doing. You really need to have a feel for the teachers and the kids and the parents and the patrons. So it's an all-encompassing environment that we are in, and schools have to provide the support to all of our customers. I was certified through Wazda as a school district administrator. I served on the state's accounting committee for 15 years, helping write the accounting manual. I was a member of several committees where I provided some leadership to other school districts and prepared workshops and conferences so that I'm very familiar with supporting other business managers. For the purposes that Dr. Hurst has asked me to come and support Othello, I believe that my role will be that of an introducer. I'm going to work with your new business director of finance in all the aspects of school district finance, from understanding the state funding, budget, year-end reporting, grants, just the whole global environment of school finance. That is what I believe my role will be. And hopefully we'll get your new finance person off and running quickly.
Thank you so much, Rebecca.
I would just like to say really quick, thank you, Rebecca, again. It's good seeing you again. You're beginning to be a familiar face again. And I do thank you for coming on again, and looking forward to working with you again for a while.
Absolutely, thank you. And I can relate to Jeanette's position. I was actually at Ephrata for 4 years. Wonderful experience, wonderful environment, but totally missed my home. And so there is that draw and that connection to being where the home fires are burning.
I just want to ditto what Ken has said. Becky, great to have you back. Of course, miss Jeanette, but we'll be missing, but I know that we're in good hands with you. And then the second part of that is, Dr. Hurst, can you give us a timeline or some kind of, and not that I want to get rid of Becky, but I know that there's another plan in play, and that still means that Becky's going to stay and help with that training potentially, or at least help hand the torch off. So what's the timeline for that?
Yeah, absolutely. I've been working with the executive team. Also had a meeting with the business and finance team today, mostly the finance team, and just share with them the continued process. I also share with the board really our desire to look at a direction that we're building capacity within house or internally. So one of the things we're doing is looking at internal candidates and looking at a process, and we will have a name to the board by the next board meeting. Once we identify that individual, that person will immediately begin training with Becky Montgomery. And she shared with me a pretty comprehensive list of items that she will be taking that individual through as far as training. And I imagine the training will take us through the year, or at least through December. So I think she's certainly prepared for us to engage with that person throughout the year. However, this will be an interim position, as I shared with the board before, and really looking to make sure that that person is set up for success, which is why we have Becky on board, but also having benchmarks and goals in place, which Becky will be doing as well, making sure we have those benchmarks in place, and regularly reporting out and sharing with the board, here's where we are with that individual, indicators for success, and then really looking throughout the first part of the school year where we are as we're reporting out to the board, but looking probably at December timeframe to share with the board, okay, here's where we are, and then making a determination whether that position becomes a permanent position or what happens with that position. We say December timeframe because what we would want to do first, make sure that person is set up for success, but also if it's not going in that direction that we wanted to go in, then we wanted to allow ourselves time to really post that position in January timeframe. And if we need to get a bigger candidate pool, then we would do so at that time. So really looking at a December timeframe to see where that individual is going to be. Does that help out, Jen, answering your question? Any other questions for Becky?
No, I just want to say thank you for accepting the invite to come work with us again, Becky. I know you were detrimental, or very instrumental, excuse me, not detrimental, last time, and you brought a bunch of good ideas. I'm glad that you're on board, and I know whoever our new director of business is will have a great tutor, a great mentor, and will be prepared for the job. So thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for the compliment.
And if it's okay, Board President, I'm just going to go ahead to the reopening plan. So we would like to do, if you could bring up the presentation, Talia, if you could share your screen. So before going into this presentation, just like to share with everyone that this is not the Othello School District's presentation. This is a presentation that was shared by our governor, Governor Inslee, on August the 5th, in which he was announcing educational recommendations for the 2020-2021 school year. On that day and in the plan, he shared several considerations for districts across the state of Washington on whether or not, and the conditions on whether to return to either in-person learning or considering a hybrid or an online model. One of the things I would like to share with the board is that there was a very strong comment, a recommendation from the governor at that time that when COVID-19 infection rates are very high, that the state was strongly recommending that school districts move to mostly an online or remote learning. So I wanted to start that off with sharing that piece, but also I wanted to share as I go through the presentation, it's just 3 slides, but the guidance from the governor is broken down into 3 categories of disease transmission level. And they're measured by incidences of cases per 100,000 students. That's something that I shared with you last board meeting as well. And I also shared with you that it's per 100,000 over a 2-week period. So it's the same concept. He divided these transmission levels into a high risk level, moderate risk level, and a low risk level. And again, I wanted to just reiterate that this is not guidance that comes from Othello School District, but instead this is guidance from our state and our Office of Superintendent of Public Instruction, OSPI, Chris Reichdahl, and also our State Department of Health. So that's where this comes from. So in looking at the presentation, when you look at the first slide, what Governor Inslee was sharing is that there are certainly high-risk counties, and I'm going to share with you what those counties and who those counties are. And this category is for those counties who have more than 75 new cases per 100,000 residents, and again, over a 2-week period. One caveat that I would like to share with you, the last board meeting I shared with you that Adams County at that time had 555 cases, new cases per 100,000 residents over a 2-week period. So that shares with you and with the public right away that we are considered a high-risk county. So what the governor made very clear, and the Department of Health, the State Department of Health shared, is that when we are in this area, meeting this metric, they strongly recommend distance learning or online or virtual learning. Also, there was a comment made by the governor and by the state superintendent that they strongly recommend canceling and postponing all in-person extracurricular activities. myself and my assistant superintendent, Pete Perez, have been talking about this piece as well and meeting with our athletic director. So he's going to have more to share about that particular component. But I would like to share with you again that Adams County, by this metric set by our state Department of Health, is considered a high-risk county. Next slide. The next thing the governor shared was that there's a moderate risk criteria as well. And there are several counties in this area, and that's for those counties that have more than 25 new cases per 100,000 residents over a 2-week period. The recommendation for moderate risk counties was, again, distance learning for middle and high school, and also possible in-person learning options for elementary. And again, just looking at this is the sheer size for the recommendation of the distance learning for the middle and high school, because they are larger than elementary. And again, the recommendation for moderate for elementary was possible in-person learning options. And again, you can see the bullet where it says strongly recommend canceling or postponing all in-person extracurricular activities. Again, that was moderate risk counties. For the last category, our governor spoke about low-risk counties. And there are a few counties, only a few, that are in this category, and that's those counties that have fewer than 25 new cases per 100,000 residents over a 2-week period. The recommendation for low-risk counties was they encouraged hybrid in-person distance model for middle and high school, again, because of the size, they're larger, and then full-time in-person learning for elementary schools. So those were the recommendations, again, coming from our governor, coming from the state superintendent, and coming from the State Department of Health. We would like to share with you at the next slide just a list of the counties so you can see who falls within the high COVID activity. You can see here 75 cases or more per 100,000 over a 2-week period. There's 25 counties. We are one of them. For between 25 and 75 cases per 100,000 over a 2-week period, those are moderate COVID activity counties. There's 9 counties in that category. And as I shared, those counties that have less or fewer than 25 cases per 100,000 over a 2-week period, that's considered low COVID activity counties. There's 5 counties in those categories. Scroll down to the next slide, please. This next slide actually breaks it down a little bit differently. You can see the 5 counties and actually how many cases. Scroll up just a little bit. You can see also in the moderate COVID activity, 9 counties between 25 and 75 cases. And you can see the number of positive cases on average for each of those counties. As you look at the high-risk counties, just scroll down just a little bit more, please. You can see that Adams County is one of the highest COVID activity counties in this particular criteria. So the only counties that have a higher degree of COVID activity is Franklin County, which has 577.7, Douglas County, which has 672.6, and Okanagan County, which has 767.6. So again, I wanted to share with you, this is again coming from our governor, our state superintendent, and our State Department of Health. And finally, I wanted to share just my portion, just what has gone into the decision for Othello School District to move toward an online or virtual model. And I'll share with you that this is certainly something that's in common with all school districts across the state, that they have to involve these partners as they're making this decision, whether it be a hybrid, online, or in person. And one of the first things that you have to look at is, what does the board say? So the board can make a decision, and set a direction, that this is the direction that we're moving towards, online or in-person or a hybrid model. Another component that you have to consider is having conversations with the superintendent and the staff and the community and the parents. So you can't ignore those voices. Another component that I wanted to share that has to be part of the conversation is the local Department of Health. And really sitting down with that Department of Health and sharing with them what your plan is and getting their recommendation. Again, the local Department of Health, they're going to look at the science. They're going to look to see at which category you're in based on the science, based on the number of cases. And as I shared, since Adams County at that time was at 555 positive cases, that naturally meant that based on that the local Department of Health, their recommendation would be an online model. Another component or another partner that we cannot overlook is our unions. So they have to be part of the conversation and the determination on what direction that we go. And those conversations are typically a conversation where we sit down, and those are conversations that are negotiated. So we can't overlook those conversations as well. And another partner that we cannot overlook is our insurance carrier. So in this case, we have to make sure that Clear Risk is looking at our recommendation and they agree. Because if they do not agree with our recommendation, then we have to ask ourselves the question, what liability do we face if our carrier is telling us that they're going to remove our insurance from us? So some considerations that have to be made, not just by Othello School District, but by all districts. And I shared this with the public, with the board, because there are districts that have been announced in the paper, through news media, through social media, that have announced that they're going in a certain direction through especially traditional. Specifically, one particular school district, Meade School District, has announced that. One of the things that I could share is that we just have to be very careful and just aware that they may not have had all the conversations that I just shared with you. Maybe they haven't had conversations with the union. Maybe they still are waiting to have conversations with their local Department of Health. We're not sure, but just be very cautious before looking at another district and what they're doing. But what I can share is that for Othello School District, we're making the best decisions based on the conversations that we're having with all of those partners that I've shared. And we are making the best decision for our kids and for our adults. I do want to take the opportunity to commend our board, because one of the things that was shared at the last board meeting is that our teachers need time to really understand our direction so we can start the planning process. That was a great decision that our board made that time based on hearing all the information from all of those players that's part of it. So I wanted to share with the board and with the public that there are a number of partners that are involved in these conversations. We have done that, and we're moving forward with Othello School District and our students the best way that we can at this time. Not saying that we will not eventually move to a hybrid or a full in-person model, but we have to do that carefully and safely and involving all those partners. I wanted to share that. Before we go into other components that the executive team will be sharing, are there any questions from the board based on anything that I've shared?
So Chris, my question is, this chart with these numbers, do you know what was the timeline of these 14 days? Because I know that we could move up and down. I mean, not maybe by 100, not likely to move by 500 over a 2-week period. But, and then is the website on this page also the up to date on what our numbers are? And does it chart like this?
In talking with Dr. Bresney, he shared with me, he gets the most up-to-date information, and even that information is a few days behind. So when you look at the date that this was shared August the 5th. So I would say that this information is probably probably a week behind. I think the latest information that I saw about Adams County still was from Dr. Bresney, and that was still had us at 555 cases per 100,000 over a 2-week period. Other questions from the board just on this component? If not, oh, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Well, my question is, and I think this will go back to Dr. Bresney, when we eventually see our numbers come down. I know they're not coming down. I noticed we had 24 new cases showed up again today on the county website. But we've also got multiple school districts within our county. And unfortunately, fellow school district, or we lie in the area where we got the highest amount of COVID cases showing up. Then you got like Ritzville, which is Lynn Ritzville School District, has very few numbers showing up there. Now, is it possible for other school districts within the county to possibly to move forward with plans on reopening? Or is it because they're in the Adams County and the high number is going to affect them all?
I think that's a good question, Ken. Certainly when you listen to the governor's speech, he certainly allowed for flexibility within the county, which is certainly appropriate. So just because they are in Adams County, I think if you look regionally or locally, so if you look at Ritzville, they're certainly at a lower rate. So they will be allowed that flexibility to move forward based on their rate. So there is that flexibility. I think when you look at Adams County, the high COVID rate is centralized here in Othello. Any other questions just on these components here? If not, we have every member of the executive team will be speaking. I'm going to turn it over to Talia. She's going to be talking about registration, and then we'll turn it over to Pete.
Hello, board. Okay, I think that's better. So registration went very well last week. I believe we registered approximately 300 to 400 students each day. So that was a great success. We are at 3,393 students who have re-enrolled and 147 students. So we are still down about 959 students based off of what Jeanette presented at the budget hearing regarding enrollment projections. We do have a plan to target those students to try to get them re-enrolled. And what we are currently doing, we're partnering with our principals and our building secretaries to make sure that each building is calling the parents of those students who have not registered yet and trying to get them registered over the phone. They don't necessarily have to come into the building. We have made the process super friendly, and it is well written on the website to provide every step that needs to be taken. So we had some people come in actually today to the district office to register their students, and that's perfectly fine as well. They can come to the district office or they can go to each building, but we are accepting registrations over the phone. At this time, we are hoping to start making calls as of tomorrow. All of the principals are on board, and I know that the building secretaries are ready to start that process as well. Any questions?
So let's say that a family has decided that they do not want to enroll their students, their children, and decide to homeschool them. At that time, if that is mentioned or explained to a principal, a secretary, whoever is contacting them, what is, like, are they taken off a to be called list? And then what are the next steps of explanation?
Yeah, so They are taking note as far as who is mentioning that they are going to be homeschooling their students, so that way we have a rough estimate. I know that Jeanette provided that there has been approximately 20 students who have officially disenrolled and will be going through a homeschool program. But we are just taking note of it and making sure that we don't call them again or possibly follow up. It really depends on what they say in the conversation. So for example, I know that I've taken some phone calls where I've called some families to see if they would like to register their students. And what they have informed me is that they're still in the process of thinking about it. They are still researching their options and trying to figure it out. Trying to hear more from other programs in surrounding areas. And what I do, I just let them know if, ask for permission to give them a call back at a later date to see if I could register them at a later date, if I see that they haven't yet registered themselves. And I just keep making a note, and that's what every secretary is going to be directed to do as well. Any other questions?
We'll turn it over to Pete.
Yeah, I think we want to step back just a moment and have Jeanette fill in a couple blanks around food service, transportation, and potential impacts to enrollment. And then Jennifer will share some components around preschool.
So just to piggyback off of what Talia said, yes, we are definitely monitoring registration, and we're monitoring essentially what's called choice transfers. So new students enrolling in our district, as well as students who are choosing to unenroll. And so we are monitoring those numbers on a pretty consistent basis, just to, I guess, keep ourselves apprised of where we're at. There is a process for students who want to go and do homeschooling. And so I believe there is a form that they fill out, if I am correct. So they can definitely contact the district office, and we can help them with that process, either my office, the finance office, or Minnie at the front desk. So as far as enrollment impact goes, the district cash-wise is funded from the state based on our budget all the way in through December. So as far as enrollment impacts go, the state funding would not be impacted until January. So that's when we would see the financial impact of that in terms of cash. But like I said, we are monitoring the situation. We are, working with families, trying to get as much information as we can, and just to help provide them information if that helps make their decision. And so we will know the enrollment impact prior to January. And so we will be monitoring that situation closely. And I'm sure Becky will as well, and whomever takes my position. Then, so food services is the next topic. As you guys know, we've been doing meals throughout the summer as well, which has been great. Definitely, I think is a good thing for our community. And so we will be continuing food services and providing meals. Obviously, it will not be the same as what it is now or what it was in the school year. So basically, in a nutshell, there's a lot of compliance requirements around food services and what we are allowed and not allowed to do as far as meal service and providing meals to students. And so the updates are just rolling in constantly from the federal government and from the state government as to what we are allowed and not allowed to do come our school startup. And so Jeanette Root is, constantly on webinars. Constantly on webinars, I'm pretty sure. And so she is definitely keeping apprised of the situation. We're having conversations of what's it going to look like? How are we going to get meals in students' hands, and what's the best way to do that? So we are definitely working on those plans, and we'll continue to work on those plans and think creatively, which has been kind of the name of the game since March. The next thing is transportation. So The transportation funding that we receive from the state that goes in the operating budget is basically funding to transport kids to and from school. And so one of the concerns we have right now is because we are not transporting kids to and from school because we will be online because our counts, as Dr. Hurst just presented, are too high for us in our county and our city to come to school. We will not be transporting as many kids to and from school. So that will impact our funding, not in the current year, but in the out year. So that's just something we're going to have to mitigate going forward and think creatively, and also, try to talk to the legislature and, plead our case. We are not the only school district in this situation. There are the vast majority of school districts are in this situation. Most everyone is going online. And so we are all in the same boat, and we are all going to, petition and fight the good fight together and try to, I guess, ask the legislature for some help with that situation. Obviously, I cannot predict what they will do or say. So that is just something we'll have to keep in mind for the future. Any questions on the financial items? Okay, Jennifer's next.
I'll just share a brief update about preschool. So the original plan was to not start preschool until early December because the portables aren't here and won't be set up until that time. But since we are going to move forward with online learning K-12, we're going to go ahead and start preschool in the same format. So preschool will be starting the same time, the end of August, as the K-12, and we will provide similar format to the other grade levels. They'll have Zoom meetings with them, and we'll provide content each week to them, and we'll move forward with that plan until portables are here and set up and we can have kids come in person. So that's just kind of an update on preschool. We're at about a half enrollment. So hopefully our numbers continue to rise here in the next few weeks, just like everybody else's. Any questions about preschool?
When and where can people enroll for preschool?
So it's the exact same process as if they're registering for K-12. They can go online and follow the steps that Thalia mentioned earlier, or they can go into any of the schools, or they can stop by the preschool office, is now open also. So same options as K-12.
This might not just be a question for Jennifer. This is probably a question for everyone. So Talia had mentioned that the secretaries are making phone calls and principals and those things, and that they could also register at the district office. Are all of the schools open from 7:30 to 3:30 every day now?
Yes, so all the building secretaries, they were contracted to come back as of today, and that's just the building secretaries, not the department secretaries. So there is someone at the office every single day as of today. I know that there's some processes that they have come up with. For example, DOHS has a little doorbell, so does Hiawatha. I'm not sure about the other school sites, but we are definitely just making sure that when people come in, they're wearing a mask and, ensuring all of those COVID safety precautions.
All right. I think we'd like to move on to some of the improvements we're putting in place as we move towards an online model. We certainly know in the spring that we reacted to a situation, and we got what we got. And now we're interested in being more proactive. We certainly had some time over the summer and in the last several weeks as we made a determination that online was going to be our model for instruction, at least in the short term. I don't want to read the Venn diagram to you, but I do want to share with you some of the thinking around. You can see some parallels from bullet to bullet, from spring to fall. Essentially, the core 4 idea is around coherence and consistency for families and for our students, and also for our teachers. So you've certainly heard about that before, but that common instructional platform is really going to be really an important first move for the system. You'll also remember in the spring that we cautioned our teachers about presenting new content because we knew we couldn't engage with students in a meaningful way. But we're definitely going to be presenting new content as we move into the online model this fall. We did a relatively good job of getting Chromebooks out in the spring. I want to say we were in the neighborhood of 75% of our students at the elementary level having Chromebooks, and certainly at 100% 7 through 12. So we're really confident we're going to have Chromebooks in everybody's hands, and we're coming up with solutions every day to increase our reach with internet access for all of our families. I know that at the registration process, that was probably the most important question that we could ask folks. How are you going to engage in these activities online? In the spring, if you remember, guidance from OSPI included the language "do no harm," created very flexible grading policies across the entire state. There were certainly some accountability concerns from teachers and parents and other folks around those grading policies, but we fully expect that we'll be running a more traditional grading policy in the fall that includes giving feedback to students. We had some challenges in the spring with communicating with teachers and with families about how kids were doing. And so we are really excited about talking points and some of the other tools we have in place to have these consistent parent communications to really work on those distance learning standards that we shared with the board last week. How do we make sure that kids are engaging in a consistent way? And then lastly, I would share with the board that we have certainly had an opportunity. It was in fact highlighted by the board at our last meeting to provide more opportunities for our teachers and the rest of our staff to engage in professional learning. So we've got that going this week. We'll have a lot more next week. Our principals are doing a great job of organizing and leading those activities. You'll see a video come out from the district, sort of this initial comment to the community about what it should look like in the fall. And I know that our principals are producing content at their site that they'll be sharing with families. Another activity that you should be aware of is what's called in education a soft opening. You would expect that the first 4 or 5 days of school, we're going to run individual conferences with families and their students to really introduce them to the platforms and the tools and the expectations that we have set for them and their students. It'll feel very much like a parent-teacher conference. We have outstanding attendance when we run a student-led conference model. So we're really confident that we're going to get most of our families in. We're doing it over a number of days so that we can monitor the required expectations for social distancing and making sure that we don't bring too many people on site in any given day. But that will be an important professional learning opportunity for our families to come in, meet with the teacher, look at the tools and understand the resources that are going to be required for their student to be successful. John's prepared to provide some additional detail about the professional learning, but I would welcome any questions about that content so far.
I have some questions. So I've had a couple of parents and other community members ask me a couple of different questions about online access. Maybe that's not the right word. Let's say a family decides to go to family vacation and they're away from in-district boundaries. Can the students, their children, still do their education online?
Yes. So sort of our defining way of online learning is the students in one location and the teachers in another location. We don't specify what that location is.
Okay, so as long as they have Wi-Fi, they should be able to access.
Yeah, as long as they live in our boundaries and are enrolled in our school district, they can certainly check in from anywhere.
Okay, and then the timeline for both elementary and then grades 7 through 12, are they expected to be online from like 8 to 3 time frame? Or if they're doing something with their parents, could they do it anytime? What should families expect? What's the timeline like that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. They should not expect that their student is online from 8 to 3. And what they should expect is there is an opportunity for asynchronous videos. So that's video content that the teacher will load and the student or the family could access at any point during the day, could go back and review. They should also expect that there's going to be some live instruction. I know that we shared in our distance learning standards presentation last time that that's an expectation for our teachers. So there will be opportunities and expectations that we want them to log in. So if you're at the elementary school, you could imagine it might be a 30 or 45-minute math lesson with your class group, with your teacher, perhaps with a couple of support paras in creating breakout rooms. Then you might have a gap for a few hours, and then it might be an afternoon reading session where the focus is on literacy skills. And that could be another 30 or 45-minute chunk with these structured activities or expectations embedded in that. Some of the learning will also, at least at the elementary level, will also be web-based. So we have some platforms that our kids have used for several years that they'll interact around fact fluency and some other components that they could do at any point during the day. Our principals have done an excellent job, though, of creating daily schedules that we're going to share with folks and say, here's what the day should look and feel like if you can set it up in this way. So that will be really clear for them. At the secondary level, we are going to ask that the kids log in during their sort of scheduled times, if you will. You know, if you have first period, here's when you need to be on. But that wouldn't be an everyday experience. It would be an opportunity for them to check in. Teacher will present the content, deliver some instruction, share what the assignments are, take some formative assessments, determine the learning plan for the week. And then there would be opportunities also around office hours where they could check in with some of those folks at the secondary level. And so you could imagine if I was teaching Algebra 1, I might teach my lesson for first period, but then let the students know, hey, tomorrow there's not going to be a live lesson, but I do have this embedded video that show you some examples. And I'm also going to have office hours from 9 to 10. And anyone is welcome to check in during those office hours. But the three of you, I need you to be here no matter what, because you need some extra support. So it'll be that kind of experience for our kids. I know that in the spring, there was some concern that some stuff just sort of went away. Parents didn't feel like teachers were reaching out. Some students saw that do no harm policy and really said, okay, they can't hurt me. I'm not showing up. So there were lots of factors in the spring working against everyone in the system, teachers, students, and parents. But I think we've really done a good job across the state of figuring some of those out and trying to make it a more productive experience for everyone.
Okay. And thank you for clarifying the 8 to 3 thing and verifying that. But for the most part, families need to figure out how to get their students online in that time frame and available. Maybe I should say available within that time frame for the most part, because that's when, just like the normal school time, that's when instruction will, for the most part, be taking place. With the asynchronous, still could be at any time or a second one or something, but is what I'm hearing.
So,
Yeah, we've been asked to track attendance. So some of the changes that Jeanette highlighted, that some of the waivers and freedom we got in the spring around meal delivery and tracking those sorts of items, the state has really tightened up on some of those structures. I think the same flexibility that we were allowed in the spring that we're tightening up for students, certainly feeling that in other areas, and attendance is one of them. So we are working with our site principals to come up with structures that say, yeah, this was a kid that was in attendance, and here's how I'm monitoring that. Here's how often they're checking in. Here's how they're demonstrating their progress towards proficiency.
Hey, Pete, you just mentioned that perhaps a scenario would be that a teacher says, hey, you three absolutely need to be here tomorrow. You need some extra work or extra help. Will there be any in-person small group for K, first, second grade? If there's a group of students or parents willing, I don't know, three students, or will there be any face-to-face interaction with teachers during this?
Yeah, initially there will be very limited face-to-face interaction, and that will be for our students who are receiving specially designed instruction. So our students that are identified with learning disabilities. We've been doing that throughout the summer, and we'll continue to do that when school opens in the fall. Once the disease levels locally get to a more appropriate level, we will bring in small groups of students, and our principals are working with their teams to determine what those filters are, who needs to come in and who needs the support. But I think we should all expect that as we move towards a more traditional model, we will reopen in a gradual way, and that will start with small groups of students. So certainly that will happen.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay, I'm going to go back on some of Jem's question, because Jem mentioned a normal day, 8 to 3. But yes, in a normal circumstance, the kids would normally be in school. Except for now, there's going to be a lot of different circumstances out there. And I see the greatest challenge is K through 3, the really younger kids. Because now some of these kids are going to be in daycares, babysitters, older siblings watching them with them. And there's still going to be some of those issues of them getting on during this period of time. Unfortunately, there's a lot of students out there, especially in the really young age, that their parents even have problems working with the computers and getting on. Is there something there to help address that K through 3 age? And especially their parents might not even be able to get online with them until after 5 o'clock when they get home from work. And of course, most of our families within the school district are two income families. We got both parents out working. And
Yeah, I think that's a common experience that folks across the country are sharing. And so most of the recommendations that you see around K2, K3 in some places is that those kids actually come back first. So if we get to the point where we are able to reopen in a limited way, our thinking is exactly where it sounds yours might be, Ken, which is to bring those kids back because we know that they're going to struggle. And as we get into the first few weeks of school and we notice that they're not engaging or they're not getting the help they need, hopefully that we're in a spot locally where we can open and bring some of those folks back. It's just all the challenges in this puzzle of reopening schools or operating in a distance model. I think all the folks in our system that I talk to would totally agree with you. It's going to be an incredible challenge for our K2 kids and our K2 parents and our K2 teachers. So we're not running away from that. We know that's going to be a factor. And as we get to open up, I think we're going to look to bringing those kids back first.
And I believe that as we were in the spring, very fast changing times, and I believe this fall will be the same way. Once we open up and we're trying one thing, you might find out something else works differently. And I believe you guys are all ready for that possible shift in directions as we go along and find out what works and what don't.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent point. One thing that I've noted from all of our folks across the system is, what do you learn from this kind of circumstance or situation over the last 6 months? And we've certainly learned that we can be flexible. We've certainly learned that we can adjust rather quickly. And I think the system will be better once we get back to what we're all used to as a traditional schooling experience.
I just want to say, I think you guys are doing such a great job, and it's so blatantly obvious to me and to anyone who's paying attention how incredibly hard you guys are working and all the thought that you've put into it. I know for me as a board member, because I'm not grinding it out in the district office, coming up with every possible scenario, when I read the news and see things like Meade School District is going back in this format, or Royal City is going back to school in this format, or Moses Lake announces, you can choose. Do you want your child in in-person school, AB schedule, or online? It gets frustrating because we already made the decision that we're going to be proactive about this and go online. And then the feedback to myself as a board member from the community is, do you guys not care about our kids as much as Moses Lake and Meade and Royal City, because they're actually trying to get their kids back in school? And so I understand that it's about the health department, and we've got the teachers union, and we have insurance issues. So if it gets annoying that we're repeating the same thing over and over, like, what about K through 3, or what about maybe just kindergarten, or any model to get our kids back in school, it's only because
it's frustrating, and I'm sure it's frustrating for you guys too, when other districts aren't being proactive and or they're doing something different, whatever it is, right, wrong, or indifferent, they're doing something different, and it's sending a message out to their community and to ours that maybe they're going to do in-person school and we're not, and it just gets frustrating, if that makes sense. So I kudos to you guys that you are fielding our questions over and over again, and I think you guys are doing such a great job. And I know I've talked to Dr. Hurst more than once, and anytime a news article comes out with any potential district doing anything that maybe could work for us, he probably wants me to lose his phone number. So I know you guys are doing such a great job, and it's just frustrating when other districts are giving even myself false hope that there's a chance for in-person school. So anyway, thank you guys for all you're doing.
Yeah, certainly lots of folks across the system working hard. Many of our teachers landed on the ground today and tomorrow, back in their sites, so to speak, on Zoom sessions in their building meetings, talking about what they're going to do when we come back. And then next week, they'll spend some time talking about how we're going to do it. So, certainly want to echo your point, Lindsay, that there are lots of folks working really hard on doing what's best for students. And that's what we've done all along.
All right. Well, if there's no more questions for Pete, I'm excited to share with the board just a quick overview of where we are with professional development in our district. As Pete had talked about this week, we really was kind of the launch of our summer PD with offering 3 days of professional learning for staff. And it really was held at the building level. Pete had talked about the work that our principals and assistant principals have been doing, and certainly appreciate that, especially with these this week's PD, which is around school plans, what a teacher day is going to look like, what a student day will look like, and then also giving our teachers and paraprofessionals time to work together and collaborate and to prepare to make plans for that. The next week, we really launch into the how. The professional learning is going to be focused on the tools and the resources that work best for distance and blended learning. And topics that we're going to cover include parent communication or instructional videos, online tools, teacher clarity, social emotional learning and office hours, instructional strategies. It's going to be a variety of different PD opportunities for our staff. And it's going to mirror what Pete shared about distance learning 2.0, taking those things that we learned from the past, improving upon that, and then giving those resources to our teachers and paraprofessionals. Also want to take a moment to really thank the many teachers and counselors, instructional coaches, and admin that have been preparing for and will lead the professional learning sessions. We really do have amazing talent in our district, and I appreciate everyone that's made this professional learning possible. And also want to thank all of the teachers and paraprofessionals that are going to be taking time, that have registered for these sessions and are going to be actively participating in it this week and next. It's been pretty awesome and encouraging to see how motivated people are to learn these tools and resources and to get ready to put them into action and to do so for the betterment of our students. Any questions about professional learning and kind of where we're at right now or the focus?
John, I have a question about professional learning. Since the both of the high schools will be changing their format of teaching from a year-long course, now they're putting a year-long course in one semester. Is that one of the trainings that you're planning on having on how to change up your entire year?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I appreciate that. That's really what the focus for the high school is this week, is taking that and saying, okay, here's what the days will look like. Here's how the sessions are going to be run and the duration, and then allowing those teachers opportunities to collaborate and say, how do we do that? How do we make that work? How do we either, extend when we get to blending but also have it concentrated right in the shorter windows of time. And so that is a big focus for the high schools this week.
Okay, great. Thank you.
John, I was wondering with the soft starting,
Mhm.
when they have when you have the parents and the students meet the teacher, is that when they will actually tell the parents how to proceed in all of this online? Because I think that's a big question of how they're going to teach kids from home, parents and or daycare.
Right. No, that's a great question. And that is exactly one of the major points or emphasis for that soft start is to be able to have them come in, share what the schedules will be. Director Stevenson asked about, is it 8 to 3:30? And Pete did well of explaining that. When they meet with the teacher, it'll be for our class, our session time will be here when it's live, or this will be the time and how you access information in Google Classrooms. And so there's going to be conversations around when and where and the schedules and how to access those tools. In addition, we've been starting to put together videos that will also kind of walk parents and families through how to access these different online tools. And that's something that they'll be able to go back and reference at later times as well. So both of those approaches will be used to really try to help our parents and our community.
Thank you.
So that answer leads me to another question. So the soft start, I guess I was always assuming soft start will be for the elementary, K-6. Will soft start also be taking place like that at 7-12 for those classes as well?
Yes.
And I know, John, that's not really, that might not be your question.
I believe I can answer. I believe the answer is yes, that it's going to be really because everything is so new, and we want to be able to. There's a saying that says, go slow so you can go fast. If we can really establish what schedules will be and what that looks like and how to access the tools and the information, and we can do that in those beginning days, we feel that it'll allow us as across the system to be more efficient and to have a better start of the school year.
Before we move on to Sandra's components around human resources, I did want to share one comment about athletics at the secondary level. I know that that's a question we get from time to time from our community. If we're online, are we going to have athletics? The short answer is yes. We can have athletics if we're in an online model. And even if we're able to bring kids back, as Director Johnson suggested earlier, perhaps we bring certain grade bands back earlier, but the secondary students have to stay online. We could be in a position where we could offer competitive athletics and activities. The CWAC is meeting tomorrow to come up with a determination as a league. We certainly should understand that there are lots of communities in this puzzle around us. So if Wapato and Quincy and East Valley are not able to participate, it wouldn't make any sense for our league to have activities or athletics, in a limited way. So it is a district decision, but at some point we have to understand that we're also part of a league, a group of schools, and so it will be impacted by that as well. But the board should know that the alternate seasons that are scheduled for the start of the school year around cross country and golf and a couple other components, we're not going to offer those activities because we will still have an opportunity to offer them in the springtime or when they traditionally fall. So again, back to just a couple summary points. We can have activities and athletics if we are online, if it's appropriate. But we also have to understand that it's really going to be based on our conversations as a member of the Central Washington Athletic Association.
Okay, so just to be clear, Pete, we are not doing what the WIAA put in place for the scheduling. This fall, we're not doing, what was it, softball and golf, those things you mentioned, we're not doing those this fall, we're gonna wait till the spring?
Correct. So if you look at, we are doing what WIAA is suggesting, and what they have offered is they're called alternate seasons. So if our boys had golf this fall. We started with golf. The state tournament still wouldn't be until the spring. So they get about a week of practice and then go on to the state tournament. What we're suggesting is we just wait until the spring when the traditional golf season is around and they have golf then. What we would be limiting right now is the alternate season for cross country. But because of the infection rate in our community and the recommendations from the Department of Health, we don't anticipate offering cross country, and we haven't been a slow pitch softball school district for several years.
So does that mean that in the spring we will make up our fall season and do football and volleyball and that kind of stuff and do our spring sports in that same season?
What WIAA has done, if you look at their calendar, is they've just compressed the seasons. So yes, there's still an expectation that there would be a football season. I don't have it in front of me, but as I think about it, it's like the end of February through the 1st of April, a compressed season. So we really feel like spring football. So they're trying to keep every activity and sport alive and give the kids a hope that we're going to be able to offer those. So yeah, that's the plan right now. Those seasons are scheduled and will be available for our student athletes and activities as long as we make progress, with the public health crisis.
Okay, thanks.
So I'll move into a few components that I have to share. I'm not coming up on the monitor. Can you all hear me? Okay, great. So HR typically has a new hire orientation for our new staff. And this year we'll be holding that via Zoom. So my HR team will be prepared to hold that for our new hire staff. That's going to take place on Monday, August 24th. That will go over just the HR technical pieces of onboarding. So things that new hires need to know to onboard to the OSD. The other piece that I wanted to touch on was this idea of providing meaningful work for our staff. If you recall in the spring, the guidance from OSPI was to ensure that we kept staff whole. And then as we move into the fall, the guidance is to ensure that staff have meaningful work as they engage in their contracts. And so P and I have been working closely with both associations. PSC has been coming to the table with lots of solutions. And so it's been a real pleasure to work with them. They are coming to the table with flexibility and just this team approach. And we are really appreciative of the PSC union membership. So we're pretty confident that, I know Ken had mentioned, staff were feeling uneasy. They received this unemployment text, but we are, as it stands right now, we're pretty confident that we're going to have meaningful work for all of our staff as we enter the fall. Any questions around meaningful work or staff contracts?
Yeah, I would, if you could elaborate, and I'll make it a little more specific. Meaningful repurposing of a bus driver, a parapro, things of that nature, because those are some of the questions I've had to field.
Yeah.
What would that look like for them? And I'm totally confident that it will be meaningful work. So if you could expand or elaborate on that.
So as Pete carries his presentations to our administrative team and our support staff, we've continued to emphasize that this distance learning is a lot of work. And so we don't anticipate staff to have little work. We anticipate our staff to be very busy. And when we spoke with PSC specifically, they've come to the table saying our staff are willing to do anything that is needed of them. Whether that be paras making home visits to ensure that our students are getting what they need from home, to checking in on the social emotional piece of students and their well-being, making phone calls, sanitizing and disinfecting. I mean, all over the board, we're going to have all hands on deck. And that's the approach that, the PSC membership is taking. And we're really appreciative of that approach. For our bus drivers specifically, we anticipate there to be work with meal delivery with our bus drivers. Also, if we anticipate to bring any of our SPED students in for small group, our bus drivers will be handling that as well. If CB Tech plans to open any vocational courses, we're going to need our bus drivers on board to do that work as well. So we really need to be prepared to also be ready to go blended at the drop of the hat, being optimistic with that piece. I know there was some hesitancy on the 3 bus driver hires that we have in our board report today. Just to clarify on those 3 positions, they are not new FTEs. They're resignations that we've had from this last school year. We've actually recruited the FTEs and we've trained them. So we definitely want to onboard them so that we're ready to roll when we are go into blended. But we also feel that we're pretty confident that we can engage them in meaningful work as we enter the fall with those 3 hires as well. Any questions on that?
My question is about the new hire. Normally there's a new hire breakfast that the board attends. Is there something that, whether with the new hires or with an all staff meeting, that you're wanting or expecting the board that we should put on our schedules now?
We, unfortunately, I mean, that we would love to have an on-site meeting or new hire orientation. That is not going to be the case, unfortunately, with the restrictions that we have in place. However, I would love to invite the board to the new hire orientation, and you can we can have an introduction of the school board at our new hire orientation. So I welcome that, and we can definitely send those invites out.
Please too, and maybe like a time frame, like we need you for these 15 minutes or something along those lines, just so that we know, instead of like, well, this is like a 3-hour meeting, that you don't want us at the whole thing, just so that it's clear what your expectation of us is. And especially since we'll have to announce that as an OPMA, just so that that part is the component would be helpful for me.
Absolutely, we can definitely do that.
Great, thank you.
I also have an update on the Families First Response Act that came into effect on April 1st. So our staff who are told to quarantine or self-isolate by the Department of Health or a medical provider, or staff who have tested positive for COVID, will have an opportunity to utilize up to 80 hours of emergency paid sick leave that has been mandated by our federal government. It is a one-time use, so it is 80 hours for the entire year. Currently, that benefit expires in December. However, we're anticipating a news release of extending that deadline. There is also another component to the Families First Response Act, emergency family medical leave. And that is for folks that don't have daycare because of a school closure. And they can utilize up to 2/3 of their pay, up to 80 hours, to stay home if they need to care for a child that doesn't have daycare or cannot physically attend school. However, we anticipating working with our staff before it gets to that point. So we would offer telework, and with the Emergency Family Leave Act, in order to utilize that, you would have to be unable to telework. So, and that's one of the, we're working with both unions, both associations on those types of benefits and what areas we can work with our staff on. Any questions on COVID type leaves?
I have a question. Will the teachers and the PSE be working in the building, or will they be working from home? I know we had discussed the teachers working in their classrooms so they had access to all of the tools that they needed to be successful. Has there been a determination on that yet?
Yeah, we, as it stands right now, we anticipate our staff to be working in the buildings. However, we are still in the middle of negotiations with both memberships. So expectations could tilt one way or the other. But we expect that we will ensure that we are able to deliver the best for our students, regardless of what the outcome is.
So you're saying it's undetermined yet, or still in negotiation, whether teachers and parents will be in the classroom teaching or not?
That is correct.
Okay.
Mike, I think we're done.
All right. Is there any other questions about anything that any one of the directors? I want to make sure if there was something that just you absolutely had to ask, you forgot, and all of a sudden you remembered. Is there anything like that in anyone's mind? All right. Well, thank you, Chris and Pete, the entire team. Again, kudos to everyone involved. I mean, you guys, I got to hand it to you. You guys are thinking about everything, and that is very much appreciated. You guys are looking at every possible scenario that can be thrown at you guys, and you guys are prepared, and I thank you for that. I hope we move to a blended or a traditional sooner than what our numbers indicate. I mean, I keep praying for that. But no, thank you very much for all the hard work you guys are doing, that hard work you'll continue to do. And like Sandra says, regardless of the outcome with negotiations, I know that OSD will be in a position to offer the best possible content to ensure that our students are getting the quality instruction that they need. Thank you once again for all of that. I appreciate it. Thanks, Chris. Moving on, we have item C3, which is personal assignment order number 2. I will entertain a motion for its approval.
I move that we approve C3.
Okay, there's been a motion made by Director Stevenson to approve. Can I get a second?
I will second that.
Seconded by Director Johnson. Any further discussion? All in favor, aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Okay, moving on to item D1. We have monitoring reports for EL5, EL7, EL14, and EL6. I hope we have taken the time to read those. Don't know if there are any questions or comments anyone wants to make before we make a motion to accept these monitoring reports.
I just had one comment or question. So it looks like every campus is going to need updated lighting and carpet. And 3 of the 4 elementaries need better playground equipment or more of it, or an assortment of mix there. Are those put into any part of the budgets to prepare for those things currently?
Jeanette, I'll let you chime in on that one.
Yes, so I'm pulling up the report here. Bottom line, yes, every year there is budget for taking care of necessary maintenance items, such as lighting, carpet, things like that. So there is budget for that. We don't necessarily line item budget in the district, so it's not specifically like line itemed out necessarily, but there is budget for items like that.
So is that set up on some kind of like a timeline right now, since we have that in a timeline format with a year? And then also it did, like I didn't mention, the high school looks like the whole thing needs to be potentially re-roofed, or huge sections of it. So I guess I'm just concerned. I don't want to find out Oh, this year we have 3 elementary schools that we have to redo all of the carpet at, and it's going to be $3 million without preparing for those kinds of things now. It was wonderful to see this in a report, but there's still like a year with a lifespan attached to it, but there wasn't like the following should be done this year, and then this one should be done this year, or those kinds of things. And so I guess that's my only, and that's not necessarily what what the EL asks for, but that was the intent of the EL. So I just want to make sure that that we're preparing for this, and then, or that the next time we have a facility discussion as a board, we're not told, hey, $3 million, so you need to figure out how to come up with that.
Yeah. So I'm not sure if you guys have seen on the report, there is on the far right hand side, it does break out by fiscal year when these items need to be replaced or taken care of. And so it is broken out by fiscal year. So that is very helpful in budgeting and things like that. So I feel like we've addressed the fiscal year component. And so unless there's something I'm missing from your comment, Jen, I feel like we met that part of it.
Maybe I didn't go over far enough in the parts that you're talking about. Like I just went into each campus and then scrolled up and down.
So, yeah, you got to go over.
Great. Those just could get so much wider than I'm prepared for. Maybe you could go there and show us that. Which I know you.
Looks like we're working on it. Yeah, let's see. Yeah, so if you scroll over to the right, you might need to make it smaller to be able to do it. There you go. So see on the right hand side there, Jen, there's the 20, it says 2021, 21, 22. That keeps going way out there.
Okay.
And then under each of those items, it lists like approximate cost and things like that.
Okay, so does this then have like a master sheet that joins all of these campuses and then the other extra places together with a dollar amount?
It does not currently, but it's definitely a good suggestion.
And maybe spell check. This was so hard for me to read. I mean, to look at. It was obvious that there was tons and tons of work that had gone into this because we had never asked for it before. And there's so much information here with dates and information and broken down. But this was, I know this was monumental just to put this together. So it was great to be able to see this. So
we'll go jump in some elementary spelling classes.
Okay. I will entertain a motion to accept the monitoring reports if there aren't any other questions.
I motion we accept the monitoring reports. Do I need to name them?
No.
Okay.
Can I get a second?
I will second that.
Okay, there's been a motion by Director Prowse, seconded by Director Johnson to accept monitoring reports for EL5, EL6, EL7, EL14. All in favor, aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Moving on to item E1. We have EL 14, staff compensation and treatment. At the last meeting, we had a very good discussion on this. And I committed to asking around other districts to see what their policies were. I got to fess up, I didn't do that or haven't done that. But I did have a conversation with a realtor, local realtor here in town, who said that currently in the Othello area, there is maybe 3 to 4 houses for sale, other than the homes that are being built either by Olson's or by Palo Verde's Custom Homes. There's 3 to 4 houses on the market is all in the entire town or city of Othello. I still cannot wrap my mind around that portion of the recommended change to the EL. I still want to ask neighboring districts to see what their policy looks like if one exists. I don't think we have a pressing, unless I'm wrong, Chris, a pressing employee that is affected or impacted today because of this. I think we still have time. We can continue to research. Like I said, I would like to ask neighboring districts, but I do. Since it's on here, we can continue this conversation. Don't know if anybody else has thought of other things or has anything else they want to share.
Mike, I guess my question is, why should we not include those 2 builders that are currently building? I mean, you said 3 to 4, and that's good information to have, but why would we not include new homes in that number?
I didn't say not to include them, but my thinking is I can speak to, there's like 7 plans over here. So I got to choose from 7 plans because there's only 4 houses for sale in Othello. I think we're making employees make a decision that I think our strings are too tight on this. And that's just me again. It was interesting to hear that there's only 3 or 4 homes for sale. We know from a current employee that there isn't a home that suits his needs right now. He's been looking, he's still looking. And that's what I meant by that. I didn't mean to exclude them. There's like 20 some odd foundations over here at Eagle Estates or whatever the new addition is. Every time I drive by over here where Olson's building, shoot, they're almost down to Burger King over there. So there is new construction going on. I didn't mean to exclude them, but my question was pertinent to how many homes are for sale in Othello. And the gentleman said 3 to 4.
Okay.
I know most of those new homes that are being built, they're actually sold first. People put earnest money down on them first. And so they're already off the market before they even begin them. And some of them are not even starting construction on them until they have a contract in front of them from a buyer. I still have to agree with you, Mike. I still have a problem with, I have no problem with the changes in line item 2, but the changes in 9, I still have a problem with that. Tying our hands a lot with that one.
I understand that there's at this very moment, a housing issue in Othello, but I think this is, maybe more the exception versus the norm, but there's definitely a housing shortage even in Moses Lake. My brother's a realtor in Moses Lake and said a house hits the market and it's sold. A house hits the market and it's sold. So I think the turnover in real estate is pretty much across the board right now, especially in Eastern Washington. I have been doing my due diligence, asking administrators, instructional coaches, and teachers, both at elementary, middle school, and high school levels, their thoughts on this. And out of the 9 people that I've talked to since our last meeting, only one person said, they all said that they think that employees that are principal and higher should live in the district. And one of them said they weren't sure about vice principals, but the other people that I talked to, like I said, not just in teaching positions, but I talked to administrator, instructional coaches, and teachers throughout the district, and want to continue to do my due diligence. I'm not saying we should vote on this tonight, but I would encourage you start asking around, see what people think. Not just what does the housing look like, but what's the temperature in our district? What is the feeling of administrators that you talk to? What is the feeling of teachers? And so yeah, I only had one person say they weren't sure about vice principals, but that they felt principals and above should live in district. And with the grandfather clause of, if you already work here and you live out of district and you are already a principal here, you will not be forced to move here to keep your job. Because I know we have some really great employees who already work as a principal, a vice principal and above in our district. So anyway, that's just the research that I have done since our last meeting. But like I said, nothing has to be decided tonight. I agree, Mike, there's nothing like pressing to where it's one way or the other, and we have to make a decision before a certain time frame. I've just been doing my due diligence, and that's the information I have to share.
You know, and the grandfather clause, that brings up an issue that we have a great vice principal wanting to move up. We just had the circumstance happen. And is he included in the, grandfather clause if he would like to move into a principal spot? But he don't live within the school district boundaries, how would that affect that? Are they going to be disqualified automatically because they don't live within the school district boundaries?
Ken, if we haven't already approved the policy, then whether that person is hired or not is in effect right now.
Yes, I agree. I agree on that. But I'm bringing up a circumstance that could happen in the future, though.
Right. So if we made it very clear to vice principals coming in, because typically we hire someone as a vice principal and not straight to principal, then if we made it very clear that it was principals and above, if you are a vice principal and you move here and you like it and you want to move up, it would just be clear, principal and above. Or maybe, no one else has either made another suggestion either, other than, nope, I don't like it. I'm open to other suggestions from board members. But I've actually talked to a couple others as well. And a lot of community members agree. I know that they're not the ones that are affected. But others said, employees said, principals definitely, executive team definitely. You can't effectively do your job without those things. And then typically the directors are chosen and selected from the principal positions that have proven themselves, not always, like with the case of communications. We're looking for, it was a specific communications person that we were looking for. So I know that that's not always necessarily the case. But so those are, I still am, I don't think that we're ready to vote yet.
No, and that's going to be the charge, Jen. You've just put out a challenge to the rest of us that if there's something that we want to change, amend, tweak, or anything of that nature, I will commit to, like I said, my research from neighboring districts. If we want to continue asking community members or whoever it is that we think we want to chime in, we can continue to do that. So Talia, can we at least can we table this at least to the next board meeting for now? And even if at the next board meeting, if the discussion is still there, we'll iron this out one way or another to where we're all in agreement with this. I'm seeing some head nodding, and that's what we'll do. One
question: when I should have looked this up and I did not. Can someone look up when are we expecting a monitoring report for EL4? Maybe that will give us like a hard and fast deadline, or at least half of it.
We're looking right now, Jen. January the 11th.
Okay, thank you. Because those would be likely grandfathered in anyways at that stage. So hopefully that's not something that's that would be, oh, suddenly you're out of compliance because of that grandfather clause, but that is good information to have. So January.
All right, thank you. Appreciate the discussion. Moving on, we will now go into recess. We will leave this meeting, log into an invite to an executive session where we will discuss potential acquisition of land or property. We will be doing it for 10 minutes. At that time, we will reconvene and finish the rest of the items on this agenda. Having said that, I want to thank those in attendance tonight via Zoom, those listening on YouTube. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. I can't stress it enough, guys. Let's do what we can as a community to abide by the instruction that we are giving as far as the social distancing. Let's wear our masks. Let's continue to do what's in our power to help the situation get better to where we can get our kids back to school. We can get some sort of normalcy back to our lives. Thank you. Let's stay strong. Pete, everybody working on the reopening plan. To all the teachers, parapros that are taking part in the PD. Let's remember, guys, we are a team. We're all in it for the right reasons. We all want our kids to have the best opportunities available to them. So let's continue doing everything we can. That's what's in our parts. And with that, we will go into a recess and we will see you at the other invite. Thank you.